so much. I am really blown away. You are so talented. Unbelievable. So adorable. I might just have to...
A 9-year-old girl from Hong Kong walked onto one of the most terrifying stages in the world. She grabbed that microphone, opened her mouth, and silenced an entire room full of thousands of strangers. Every single judge voted yes. A celebrity guest slammed the golden buzzer so hard that confetti rained from the ceiling. Over 42 million people watched her audition online. She became a child legend overnight. But viral fame is only what everyone saw. Because behind the fairy tale moment the internet replayed 1,000,000 times, there's a much more complicated story. And one detail about her father that almost destroyed everything. And most people never even noticed it. And the most unsettling part is that the signs were there from the very beginning. The controversy nobody expected. While Celine was performing in front of millions of people and receiving golden buzzers, a different story was building in the background, and it was a story about her father. Steve Tam had not entered the public conversation quietly. As Celine's visibility exploded during the AGT run, Steve's own visibility grew alongside it. He presented himself publicly as Dr. Steve Tam, a title that implied academic credentials in the field he was working in. When Hong Kong media began examining that credential more closely following Celine's viral breakthrough, uncomfortable questions started surfacing. Steve Tam's doctoral degree was a PhD in business administration from a university in the Philippines, not a qualification in music or vocal training of any kind. When this detail became public, people began questioning whether the doctor title was appropriate in the context of presenting himself as a professional singing coach and music expert. Steve addressed the issue publicly, saying he had used the name Dr. Steve in connection with a headhunting business before he ever opened a singing school, and that he had never directly claimed to have a doctorate in music. He apologized for any confusion the title had created. The controversy about his credentials was only the beginning. Shortly after Celine's AGT audition went viral, Steve Tam announced the release of his own music album. The timing struck many observers as suspicious. Critics and fans of Celine online accused Steve of using his daughter's fame as a platform to launch his own career, calling him a stage parent who had turned a 9-year-old's talent into a promotional vehicle. The phrase used repeatedly on social media was that he was treating his daughter like a money tree. Further scrutiny uncovered that the list of singing awards and achievements displayed on Steve's professional website contained discrepancies in dates and event names that did not align with verifiable records. When confronted with these inconsistencies, Steve said the errors were simply the result of poor memory about events that had occurred 20 to 30 years earlier. He said he could not be expected to remember every specific detail from competitions held decades in the past. The most damaging accusation came from a well-known local Hong Kong celebrity named Nancy Sit Kayan. Nancy Sit accused Steve Tam publicly of stealing her students, meaning he had recruited students away from her by inappropriate or unethical means. Nancy Sit described him in public statements as an immoral person with treacherous intentions, which was a significant claim given her own reputation in Hong Kong entertainment circles. At the same album launch event where he announced his new music project, Steve Tam apologized to Nancy Sit directly and pledged to donate money connected to the disputed situation to charity. Through all of this, Celine herself stayed focused, kept performing, and said publicly that she loved what she was doing. But the shadow of her father's controversies had attached itself to her story in ways that were difficult to separate from the genuine achievement of what she had accomplished on stage. Celine Tam grew up with a voice the world was not ready for. Celine Tam was born on the 22nd of November 2007 in Hong Kong, China, into a family where music was not just a hobby. Her father, Steve Tam, was a singing coach who owned vocal academies and had spent years building his career around training young performers. Her mother, Jia Ming Shan, supported the family while Steve ran his music business. Both Celine and her younger sister were named after legendary Canadian singer Celine Tam. Dion, a detail that tells a story about the kind of household they were raised in before either of them could sing a single word. By the time Celine was 3 years old, her father had already started giving her formal singing lessons. The story of how it began is one that Steve Tam has told publicly many times. During a car ride, a very young Celine started singing "My Heart Will Go On," the iconic Celine Dion song. Steve heard the quality of her voice and could only manage a single word. Wow. That moment, according to him, was when he knew his daughter had something extraordinary. He went home, spoke to his wife, and made a decision that would change every part of their family life going forward. By the time Celine was 4 years old, she was already performing live in front of real audiences. Not just family gatherings or school events, but actual public performances that tested her voice and her nerve at an age when most children are still learning to tie their shoes. Most of the world discovered Celine Tam through America's Got Talent in 2017. But by the time she walked onto that stage, she had already been performing professionally for 5 years and was already famous in parts of Asia. At age 5, Celine entered a contest called Let's Sing Kids in China, performing a song called You Raise Me Up by Secret Garden. That performance announced her talent to Chinese television audiences and started a wave of attention that grew quickly. In 2014, when she was just 6 years old, she performed Let It Go from the movie Frozen at the Shanghai Love Concert, sharing a stage with pop singer Sheila Amza in front of a massive crowd. The video that first made her go truly viral internationally was a 2015 duet with a boy named Jeffrey Lee. The two young singers performed You Raise Me Up together on a television program called Little Big Shots, and the clip spread across the internet with hundreds of millions of views. Both children were standing on a stage far too big for their small frames, singing a song meant for adult voices, and the combination of talent and innocence made it nearly impossible to watch without being moved. Jeffrey Lee would later appear on America's Got Talent Season 13 himself, carrying the same platform the duet had built for both of them. Celine was also competing internationally during this period. She competed in Season 10 of Britain's Got Talent in 2015 at just 8 years old. Her audition was not televised, but she was able to advance past the initial round before being disqualified for reasons that were never fully explained publicly. That experience taught her something important. Even the biggest stages do not always end the way a performer deserves. Back in Hong Kong and China, the nickname Little Giant Lung had started following her everywhere. The voice that came out of her small frame did not match the size of the person producing it. People who watched her perform live frequently described the experience as genuinely shocking, the kind of disconnect between appearance and sound that makes audiences stare and then rise immediately. Before she was 9 years old, Celine had won 8 singing championships in a single year. She had appeared on national Chinese television. She had performed at events across multiple countries. And she had already experienced what it felt like to compete at the highest levels of international talent shows and not make it through. None of that was visible to the American audience watching Season 12 of America's Got Talent. All they saw was a tiny girl with a giant voice. The full story was considerably more complicated. The night Celine Tam silenced an entire theater. In 2017, 9-year-old Celine Tam walked onto the America's Got Talent stage and immediately looked like the smallest person ever to stand under those lights. The crowd in the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles was already buzzing before she sang a single note. Simon Cowell, Mel B, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel watched from the judges' table with the cautious expressions that experienced talent show judges wear when they are not yet sure whether what they are about to hear will be extraordinary or heartbreaking. Then Celine opened her mouth. The song was My Heart Heart Will Go On, the same Celine Dion ballad that had played through a car stereo 6 years earlier when her father first heard her voice and decided everything needed to change. The notes that came out were not the notes of a child attempting an adult song. They were controlled, precise, powerful, and genuinely emotional in a way that young singers almost never manage. The crowd stood up before she even reached the middle of the song. All 4 judges voted yes immediately. Simon Cowell, who has a long and well-documented history of being the judge least likely to show visible emotion, was seen reacting with genuine surprise. Mel B was visibly moved. Heidi Klum was already on her feet before the final note ended. Howie Mandel joined them without hesitation. The audience was on its feet for the entire performance. Celine received a unanimous yes vote and advanced to the Judge Cuts round. The moment the clip was uploaded to the official AGT YouTube channel, the numbers started climbing at a rate the production team had rarely seen from a single audition. That audition video was uploaded online and became a sensation almost instantly. Within weeks, the clip had been viewed tens of millions of times. By the end of 2017, it had passed 42 million views, making it Hong Kong's top trending YouTube video of the year. The number of views was more than 40 times what any of her competition in that same category had managed, a fact that underscores just how disproportionately massive the response to that single performance was. After advancing through the Judge Cuts round with a performance of Michael Bolton's How Am I Supposed to Live Without You, Celine Tam found herself standing in front of a guest judge who was about to change the course of her competition journey. Laverne Cox, the actress and activist serving as guest judge for that particular round, watched Celine perform. The performance earned sustained applause and visible emotion from everyone in the room. Laverne Cox pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti fell from the ceiling. The crowd went wild. Celine was sent directly to the quarterfinals without having to compete through the standard elimination process. She had become, at that moment, the youngest solo contestant in the show's history to receive a golden buzzer, breaking a record that had only just been set by fellow contestant Angelica Hale a short time earlier. In the quarterfinals, Celine performed When You Believe, the powerful Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey duet, as a solo. Heidi Klum gave her a standing ovation. The vote from the judges was enough to send her to the semi-finals. Celine Tam was still 9 years old. She was competing in the live rounds of America's most watched talent competition, and she was still standing. The semi-finals performance was How Far I'll Go from the animated film Moana. The song suited her voice and her age, and the delivery was technically strong. Heidi Klum stood again. The applause was real, but the votes from the full judging panel were not enough to send her to the finals. Celine Tam's America's Got Talent journey ended in the semifinals, one round away from the stage where careers are launched into permanent orbit. The result was disappointing, but not devastating. She had reached the semifinals as a 9-year-old from Hong Kong, singing in her second language for audiences that had never heard of her before the summer of 2017. The story of what happened next, though, was about to get considerably more complicated than a simple elimination. The message that connected Celine Tam to Celine Dion. In the middle of all the noise surrounding her father's controversy, something happened that cut through everything and reminded the world what was actually important about the whole Celine Tam story. On the 14th of September 2017, Celine Tam posted a message on her social media. The message was addressed to the legendary singer she had been named after. It said, "No matter how far I'll go, my heart will go on," and expressed hope that someday she could sing with Celine Dion in real life, rather than just as a dream. 6 days later, Celine Dion herself retweeted the message. In her reply, Celine Dion said that Celine Tam had done an amazing job on the show and personally invited Celine Tam and her entire family to attend one of her Las Vegas residency performances as special guests. That moment was one of the most beautiful details of this entire story. A 9-year-old girl who had been named after a legend, who had spent her whole life singing that legend's most famous songs, who had stepped onto the biggest talent stage in America and delivered a performance of the most iconic song that legend had ever recorded, received a direct personal message of congratulations from the legend herself. Whatever was happening around the edges of the story, that one moment was purely about the music and what it can do when the right voice finds the right song. After America's Got Talent run ended in the summer of 2017, Celine Tam found herself in a situation that many child performers face after a sudden massive burst of attention. The question of what comes next and how to handle it is one that almost no 9-year-old is equipped to answer alone. The immediate aftermath of the show was a blur of appearances, requests, and opportunities. Celine was Hong Kong's most recognized young talent. Her audition video had more views than any other Hong Kong content on YouTube that year. She was being invited to events, asked to perform at corporate gatherings and private shows, and was recognized in public constantly. She agreed to cut the ribbon and model clothing at the launch event for an Italian fashion brand called Mona Lisa. She gave speeches and made appearances, but those around her could see that the intensity of the spotlight was substantial for a child who also needed to attend school, spend time with her family, and simply be a kid in a way that public life had been making increasingly difficult. During this period, discussions were taking place publicly about whether children should be allowed to compete on America's Got Talent at all. Some voices in the entertainment industry were suggesting that the pressure placed on young contestants was inappropriate and that an age restriction should be introduced. Celine herself responded to this conversation. She said that people of all ages should be able to participate in talent competitions if they have genuine talent to show. She added that she would not force her younger sister Dion to compete, but would support her sister with singing if that was the direction Dion chose. That response was notable because it came from a 9-year-old who had experienced both the best and most complicated sides of what a major television platform does to a child performer. She still believed in the value of the opportunity. She just understood it differently than she had before walking onto that stage. Celine Tam's unexpected return to the global stage. After nearly 2 years away from major competition, Celine Tam made a decision in 2019 that surprised many people who had assumed her competitive performing days might be behind her. She entered World's Got Talent, a global singing competition broadcast on Hunan television in China, which gathered top talent from Got Talent competitions around the world. This was a different kind of pressure from AGT. The audience was enormous across Asia. The competing performers were some of the strongest acts from multiple international versions of the Got Talent franchise. Celine performed an original song called Who I Am, a piece she had composed herself. This was a significant development that went largely unnoticed in most coverage of this event. During her time on America's Got Talent, Celine had mentioned that she wrote song lyrics and composed music. At the time, the comment received little attention because audiences were more focused on her interpretations of famous songs. But stepping onto the World's Got Talent stage with an original composition was Celine Tam making a statement about who she was as an artist, beyond the girl who sang Celine Dion songs at age 9. The judges at World's Got Talent were so impressed by both the song and the performance that one of them pressed the golden buzzer. The confetti fell again. Celine Tam had received a golden buzzer for the second time in her life, across 2 different versions of the Got Talent franchise, becoming the first person from Hong Kong and China to achieve that specific combination. She was also the youngest finalist in World's Got Talent history. The final result placed her in the top 8, but not the top 2. A second competition, a second near miss at the very top. But the 2 golden buzzers told a story of consistent excellence across 2 different global stages, in 2 different languages, with 2 very different styles of performance. The years following the World's Got Talent competition showed a side of Celine Tam that the stage had never really had room to display. In a collaboration with a writer named Peter Eng, Celine published an illustrated children's book called Harper. The book was not simply a celebrity vanity project. It carried a specific message that Celine felt strongly about personally. Harper addresses the experience of being bullied and the importance of not losing your own happiness happiness because of people who do not like you. The subject was one that Celine had spoken about with genuine feeling in public conversations, using her platform to speak directly to young readers who might be experiencing exactly what the book described. She became an ambassador for Room to Read, a nonprofit organization founded in 2000 that focuses on literacy education and gender equality in low-income communities across Asia and other parts of the world. In November 2020, the announcement was made official. As a Room to Read ambassador, Celine committed to participating in awareness building and fundraising activities. In a virtual performance she gave for Room to Read donors, she said that before she could learn her first song, she had to learn how to read, and that literacy and a love of books had allowed her to chase her dreams. She described being proud to support millions of children around the world who were imagining their own futures. At age 14, Celine was accepted as a member of the University of Hong Kong's Academy for the Talented, a prestigious program that identifies and supports young people with exceptional abilities in various fields. The acceptance placed her within a selective group that the university had identified as having potential well beyond what standard educational pathways were designed to develop. She also spoke publicly about environmental issues, the ocean, and conservation, and was frequently seen involved in projects connected to environmental awareness. She was learning to play guitar alongside her continued vocal training. She shared book recommendations on social media. She remained genuinely interested in education at a time when many performers her age were focused exclusively on entertainment. The combination of the comic book, the humanitarian ambassadorship, the university program, and the environmental advocacy painted a picture of a young person who had consciously chosen to use the platform that My Heart Will Go On built for her in the service of things that mattered outside the spotlight. What happened to Celine Tam after the spotlight? By the time Celine Tam turned 17 in November 2024, the girl who had been 9 years old on that AGT stage had grown into someone quite different from the child performer that 42 million people had watched online. The family had relocated to California. Celine was attending Beacon Hill School in Pacific Palisades, balancing a real academic life alongside her music. Her estimated net worth by her mid-teen years was reported at around $1 million, built from performances, concert appearances, brand endorsements, and international television contracts accumulated across a decade of public performing. She remained close to her sister Dion, who had also been singing publicly. She continued to love cartoons, drawing, spending time at the beach, and eating ice cream. She was learning badminton, swimming, and hiking. She was planning to get a cat. None of those details sounds like the profile of a star. They sound like the profile of a teenager trying to be a teenager, which is exactly the challenge that every child who rises to fame too quickly eventually has to navigate. The industry is designed for adults. The schedules, the public appearances, the constant visibility, the financial decisions, the management dynamics. None of it is built around what a child actually needs. The question of Steve Tam's role in all of this remained a complicated one. He had been publicly accused of exploitation and had publicly responded with apologies and pledges to do better. He had launched an album during his daughter's moment of maximum visibility. He had represented himself with credentials that turned out to be less relevant to his actual work than their presentation suggested. He had also genuinely recognized his daughter's talent at age 3, dedicated years to training her, traveled with her across the world, and never stopped showing up at her side on stage and off it. Whether that combination constitutes devoted parenting, calculated management, or some complicated mixture of both is a question that the people closest to the situation have never answered clearly, and probably never will. What is clear is that Celine herself, through every controversy and every complication, has consistently expressed love for what she does, commitment to her craft, and a desire to use her voice for purposes that extend beyond personal ambition. The story of Celine Tam is not unique in the world of child performance, and that pattern is exactly what makes it worth examining carefully. Child performers carry a weight that adult performers never have to manage. The pressure to be extraordinary starts before a normal childhood is finished. The public forms an opinion before the child is old enough to understand understand what public opinion even means. The family dynamics around a child who earns significant income and generates significant attention become complicated in ways that child psychology research has documented repeatedly. The parent, who is also the manager, the coach, and the primary decision-maker, occupies a role with no clean boundaries and enormous potential for conflict. Celine Tam navigated all of those complications in public, starting from age 9, with millions of people watching and forming opinions about her, her father, and her future before she had finished elementary school. The 4 judges on AGT rose to their feet. Celine Dion herself sent a message of encouragement from Las Vegas. Hong Kong celebrated her as a national achievement. 42 million views in a single year told the world that what she did was real and exceptional. And through the father's controversies, through the questions about credentials and motivations, through the transition from child prodigy to teenager, through the second golden buzzer, and the illustrated book, and the Room to Read ambassadorship, and the University of Hong Kong program, Celine Tam did something that many child performers in similar situations do not manage to do. She remained herself. She did not disappear from public life, but she also did not chase fame at the expense of everything else. She pursued education seriously. She developed interests outside music. She published a book about kindness. She advocated for children who did not have the opportunities she had been given. She kept singing, kept competing, and kept finding new ways to use the voice that stopped a crowd in Los Angeles when she was 9 years old. Celine Tam's life now beyond the spotlight. Celine Tam is now 17 years old. The girl who sang My Heart Will Go On America's Got Talent in 2017 has been performing publicly for over a decade. The audition that generated 42 million views remains one of the most watched clips in the history of the Got Talent franchise. The 2 golden buzzers, one from AGT and one from World's Got Talent, make her part of a small and exclusive group of performers who have achieved that distinction across multiple international versions of the competition. The controversies surrounding her father were real and raised legitimate questions about the ethics of managing child performers and the responsibilities that come with being the parent of a child who earns money and attention at a very young age. Those questions were never cleanly resolved, and the full truth of what was primarily about business versus what was primarily about parenting remains something only the family knows with certainty. What is beyond question is the voice that a father heard on a car ride when his daughter was 3 years old and decided immediately was too significant to ignore. The voice that won 8 championships in a single year before the rest of the world had any idea who Celine Tam was. The voice that stopped 4 experienced judges cold in the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles on a summer evening in 2017 and sent 42 million people online to hear what all the noise was about. That voice belongs to a person now, not just a child performer. At 17, with a University of Hong Kong academic program on her record, a children's book in print, a Room to Read ambassadorship on her resume, and a decade of professional performance behind her, Celine Tam is building whatever comes next entirely on her own terms. The stage is still there when she wants it. The voice is still extraordinary, and the question of what a 9-year-old girl from Hong Kong who sang Celine Dion's most famous song on American television becomes as an adult is one that the world is still watching to find out. Celine Tam walked onto that AGT stage at 9 years old and gave a performance that 42 million people could not forget. The journey after that moment was more complicated, more painful, and more inspiring than most people ever knew. A father whose motives were questioned. A girl who kept going anyway. A voice that never stopped growing. Hit that like button if this told the full story, and subscribe for more.